Married for 18 years, 4 kids, and now divorced for 8 years. I still carry the battle scars of a painful divorce. Those scars are mainly from the unnecessary suffering my children experienced. During my search for a breakthrough to happiness, I found peace first. I began to share my breakthrough with others. After coaching divorced women for years, I was dissatisfied with the impact I was making. These women came to me so battered, so bruised from the drama and the trauma of their divorce, there was little I could do to help them find happiness. What if, I thought, instead of helping at the end of the divorce process, I help women and men experience a better process at the beginning of a divorce. I set out to find professionals who advocate for the peaceful dissolution of marriage for the sake of the couple, but mostly for the sake of the children. Meet 6 professionals who hold the space where peace is possible. A divorce attorney, a certified divorce financial analyst, a clinical psychologist, a certified divorce coach, a certified divorce real estate expert, and a certified valuation analyst. Welcome to Divorce and Drama, the African American guide to breakups and breakthroughs. It's time to meet your guides. Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Pamela Elaine Nichols, your host for this webinar and a resilient divorcee. Psalms 35 says, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And joy's right-hand man or woman is peace." My joy is to share with you, through the wisdom of these experts, how to get from where you are in the divorce process to your place of peace. Each of you may be in different stages of the divorce process than the other. The goal today, no matter where you are, is to offer resources, insight, and mostly a mindset shift. You may have joined this webinar out of concern and support for someone thinking about going through or still recovering from a divorce. We thank you for standing for that someone. In this webinar, the guides, aka your speakers, will discuss from their seat of expertise the breakdown and breakup dynamics unique to the African American family. Then they will discuss the breakthroughs or solutions that we are all hungry to know. After the discussion portion of this webinar, we will take your questions. You will remain anonymous, so don't worry if that's a concern. Simply raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. We will aim to answer every question. Towards the end of our time together, you will be given next step instructions. Cheers to your breakthroughs. You have entered the place where peace is possible. Let's begin. Welcome to my guides and speakers. Hello. You can unmute yourselves.
Hello, good morning.
Hello. Good morning, hello. And I want to welcome all of the anonymous registrants. Thank you so much for being here today. So let's kick this off because there's a lot to cover. Here's what I want to present to my guides. Marketing experts tell us that what motivates people to seek your help. That is when they have a problem that they don't want and want a solution they don't have. The problem in the African American family is we are suffering. both publicly and privately. Privately, from the breakdown and break up of the family. We have problems we don't want, and we want solutions that we don't have. Describe the impact, financial, emotional, spiritual, parental, from your expertise on the breakdown and breakup of the African American family. Then share with us the practical and tangible breakthroughs or solutions you provide that can reduce, if not eliminate, divorce drama and trauma to the African American family and bring peace. You are welcome to jump in as you see fit. There is no order. Wait. Okay, so everybody's unmuted and go.
Well, I'll jump in.
Okay.
Let me just state that I have handled probably 1,500 divorces over the years, and I've seen people at their worst, because oftentimes divorce brings out the worst in people, even people who are good people. It takes its toll emotionally, financially, just in terms of a destruction of your family and everything. I have coined a phrase where I said, just because you fail at marriage does not mean you need to fail at divorce. And so it doesn't mean, it means that you shouldn't have a severe impact on your family, on your children. And in many instances, it does, because often we see people who have PhDs who are keying cars, who are breaking out windows, because when your heart is broken, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, blue, green, rich, poor. If your heart is broken, you sometimes do things that you may regret the next day. And sometimes you think about things that you would have done if you could have gotten away with those as well. So in terms of finding an approach that will minimize the drama and the trauma to your children, that is what this process needs to be in the African American experience, because in many instances, we fought for the right to be married and for our marriages to be legally acceptable in our American society during the times of slavery. And now marriage means a lot to African American families, but you're seeing a decline as to how we dissolve marriages without the level of conflict. And I want to touch on one other point, and that is sometimes you think only in the context of marriage, but right now 50% of the population in our community are having children outside of marriage. And that's even more drama, because that's akin to building a house with no foundation. And so when the winds of life come and they blow in your direction, if you don't have the stability, then it will certainly blow your house down or your relationship away, and your children will be severely impacted. So all of these things are very important to really address the issue of how we minimize the impact, the drama and the trauma, particularly to our children when African Americans are going through divorce.
Attorney Lester, I'm so glad that you kicked this off, because there's one thing that I needed to do before launching into that statement where you gave a great answer, and that is to allow our guests to get to know you and all of our panelists, our speakers, better. So Lester, Attorney Lester, why don't you kick this off also and share with us an obscure, funny, quirky, or interesting fact about yourself?
Well, I represent children. A lot of times I'm appointed by the court to represent children when their parents are going through divorces. And so in working with children, sometimes children are very candid and straightforward with you. And in this instance, my own children were candid and basically said, how dare the judge allow you to represent somebody's children without conferring with us first? Because you're no perfect father. You have all these flaws. And they were able to list all my flaws. And I said, are you serious? And they're like, absolutely.
That's a good one. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm going to just back up a little bit to my speakers and ask you if you would do the same. So Casey, why don't you go next? And then once we introduce ourselves, we'll go back to the discussion that I launched in prematurely, but Attorney Lester gave a great answer to. All right, Casey?
Thank you so much, Attorney Lester. That was hysterical. And kids love to point out our flaws. Don't ask them any questions that you don't want the answers to. So for me, I have been a financial professional. And at the time, I think I was like 16 years in. And instead of writing about finances, God had me write about faith, to take me through this whole faith lesson, to teach me all kinds of things. So I think that's just a quirky thing that God has done. And it's been an incredible journey. And also, I am a divorced mom of one, and I got divorced when she was one. So another fun fact.
Thank you. Okay. Take it off, Janella. Take off with it.
Okay, my name is Janella Street. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist. I've been working with family court in Northern California for about 15 years, and I'm licensed in the state of California and the state of Nevada. And a funny, quirky fact is I did a cold plunge, if you're familiar with that, on a dare in the San Francisco Bay in the month of February. So when I say it was cold, it was cold. Oh. And I loved it. And I didn't think I would, and I've gone back 3 times since. So Don't knock it till you try it. It's a great way to relieve stress.
Nice. Jolisa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jolisa Webb. I am a CDC certified divorce coach, and I am also a retired Air Force officer and currently employed in federal government as a senior leader. So I decided to become a divorce coach because when I was going through this process, I just realized that there are some unique challenges sometimes when you're in the military, particularly when you're in a senior leadership position, and you're married to another military person who's in a senior leadership position. There are some particular challenges that I know I dealt with, and also some of my colleagues. Some of them just didn't have anyone to talk to for fear that they might somehow be looked at differently in terms of their command, for fear of out of respect for their colleagues, for their spouse's professional situation, not wanting to cause any dishonor or discredit to them professionally or harm them. And so there's kind of a silence that goes along with that. There's also some implications related to security implications, so that even if the spouse is showing up very badly, there are some things that you want to think about in the aftermath. Should you decide to become very public with this. Military is a very closed society, and sometimes we all tend to know each other. As one of the smallest little communities you ever did want to see. And so things like that can have a far-reaching implication when you think about things related to security issues. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to become a divorce coach, was to let women know, particularly strong women who are so used to showing up professionally as I am woman, hear me roar, and I don't need any help and I got this. Let them know that, hey, you can talk to me. You have someone to talk to. This is not something that you need to navigate alone. I will be there for you, and let's talk about this. And sometimes that's all people need, is for someone to talk to that's objective, that's neutral, that will listen to them, and that will really help them think about how they can honor their truth and be their best self through this process. One of my quirky things, you guys are actually getting the benefit of one of my quirky things. If you look behind me, I have a backdrop. And that's because I love to decorate and have events in my home with themes. And one of the biggest ones that we enjoy in the summer or late summer is glamping in the backyard. So my family comes over, we pitch tents, we hang out in the backyard with china and, duvet covers with nice pillows and all kinds of stuff. And it's really kind of fun. So thank you so much.
That's great. And it's a beautiful backdrop too. Carlene.
Carlene Johnson, certified divorce real estate expert. I am the antidote to the real property issues that arise in divorce cases. A quirky thing about me, I am an Air Force veteran and afraid of heights. I am a real estate professional and I'm directionally challenged. So that's me.
That is funny. That's a great one. Thank you for that. I want all of our registrants to know that Stephen White is listed as a speaker today, but he had a family death. So in his absence, I still want you to get to know him. So we're going to play a little video clip of my interview with Stephen White in his absence. Stephen A. White is a certified valuation analyst. He is the founder and managing partner of Onyx Partners Group, an independent business valuation advisory firm. Marital disillusion is the focal point of my interview with Stephen. Now, if you don't know what business valuation means, you are not alone. Stephen will simplify the complex and help us understand why valuation of a business matters in the dissolution of a marriage.
Because value in a business is not just about just knowing what the value of your business is. In situations such as marital dissolution, there's a lot of intricacy points that you need to address as you value that business, whether or not you're valuing this business in a particular industry or you're familiar with this particular industry. You just can't look at their balance sheets. You have to understand that industry and how that business operates and how you can compare that business to other companies that are similar in size in that same industry, and they don't understand how to unlock that value. That's where we come in and we bring our expertise into the situation and provide that information so that everyone will have a clear understanding of exactly where you currently are with your business, but even so, where that business should be going in the future as well as an estimate.
All right, that's the end of that first part with Stephen White, and we will introduce Stephen throughout the webinar in his absence. So let us return to the important question, or actually statement that I posed in the beginning about the breakdown and the breakup of the African-American family from your perspective. And then what are some of the breakthrough solutions that you can offer to us? So Attorney Lester was wonderful in kicking that off. I'm going to open it up to the rest of the panelists now, or our guides, to share from their perspective.
I did want to
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I did want to kind of follow up on what the attorney was saying, in that by the time people get to me, the forensic psychologist, whether it be by court order or by seeking out mental health treatment during a divorce, they are emotionally torn, they're confused, they're hurt. Sometimes they've engaged in activities that he alluded to, things that drove them to do things that they were ashamed of or embarrassed of, things that made the situation more complicated or cost them more money. And by the time they get to me, they're still in pain and they're trying to figure out what's the next step. And oftentimes, if they've been mandated to see me by court order, there's a lot of anger, resentment, and bitterness in combination with that pain. So one of the problems that I solve is helping them identify the pain from the loss of the relationship versus the pain and confusion around co-parenting fears. And I also help them develop parenting plans and refocus their energy on their children and their life moving forward in this transition period.
So, Dr. Janelle, I just want to piggyback up or just probe that for a little bit, because I think it's important. You mentioned pain. I think you mentioned fear. I might be making that up, but I do know that you also mentioned doubt when we had our conversation. Pain, fear, and doubt seem to be the driving force behind some of the behavior. Why?
You have the pain of the loss of the ideal relationship, whether that was even close to what the relationship was in reality. You have fear of the unknown. How am I going to do this in a separate household? How am I going to do this on my own? How am I going to afford this? How am I going to manage? What are my parents going to think? And that's huge in the African American community. What are my parents going to think? What are the people at the church going to think? And then doubt in your ability to do it on your own. Doubt in maybe your parenting ability, maybe your fear about going through, or doubt about going through a custody evaluation. All of which is, very invasive. I'll be honest with you. But those combinations of emotions drive a lot of negative behaviors that can make the transition much more difficult. And I help people kind of give them tools to resolve those negative emotions so they can move forward in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you. Jolisa, do you want to jump in and talk about the breakup and breakdowns and the breakthrough solutions that you offer?
I absolutely do. And similar to Dr. Janelle hit on something very important. She talked about fear and she talked about pain. And she also alluded to shame. And when you're dealing with women, especially Black women, who a lot of times are used to being super women, successful Black women, powerful Black women, there is a lot of shame that goes along with that. And one of the things that's very interesting right now is this epidemic of what's called the gray divorce. That is individuals who are over 50 and entering the divorce process, and as well as individuals who've been married for 20 years or more, similar to what you just saw with Bill and Melinda Gates. And so as we're over 50, a divorce between individuals who are over 50 look a little bit different than a divorce between individuals who are a little younger. You have to think about a lot of times my clients who are older, because that's who are more seasoned, because that's who I target, like myself. We had visions of, hey, empty nest, and the kids are about to leave, and we're about to have our house to ourselves, and this dream spot, and retirement, and all of those things, and all of a sudden, it's like the rug gets snatched up from under you. So you, and it can be very overwhelming, because now you're having to start to think about some things that, quite frankly, your eyes were focused in a totally different direction. You were beginning to see the light at the tunnel, and now you're about to enter a completely different tunnel. And so that is something that I have seen women sometimes, some of my clients, stay in the marriage a little longer than they probably should, because they're paralyzed by that fear. They are worried. They feel ashamed. They are overwhelmed. They did not anticipate being a parent by themselves. And so I work with my women, because my target audience is women, although I'm certainly happy to coach men as well. But Black women have the highest divorce rate of any cohort, unfortunately. Military women in particular can have a pretty high divorce rate. And so that is what my focus is on providing solutions, techniques, and strategies that really help them get their emotions under concern, help them focus on the future, help them get organized, help them learn to communicate more effectively and listen in ways that are responsive as opposed to reactive, and start to shift from the story of divorce and the victim mentality to the business of divorce, and remind them that you are a goddess no matter which way, no matter whether you're married, single, or divorced.
Let me jump in here and before the other panelists, and I want to play here between Jolisa, the divorce coach, and attorney Lester, the divorce attorney. How do you two, or how could you two, if a perspective comes to you, someone contemplating divorce comes to you, how would you two work together? What would you say to this possible client about what he or she should do first?
Well, I would basically say this is going to be a rocky road, and you're going to need some hand holding to navigate through these troubled waters of divorce. And oftentimes I direct my clients to find a coach, identify a therapist, to basically hold their hands through this process. The resources that are available to divorcing parties are immense. Too often we don't take advantage of it because we think we can go it alone. And we think that we can basically, and I want to talk about African American men who I see all the time because they feel like they can get their therapy at the barbershop on Saturday morning, getting a haircut, instead of going to see Dr. Street. They're going to listen to Joe, who's sitting there waiting to get his haircut, and he's an expert on love and marriage. And so, but he's having his whole life is crumbling with his wife at the same time. And so, but African American men are just opposed to therapy. And what I've seen is that if a brother at least goes and says, you know, I'll try and go to this counseling session, she'll give him another shot, you know, because, you know, as long as he's moving in the direction of trying to make this work. But I would say that, you know, you need some hand holding. You need to take advantage of resources. You need to basically see it as I'm not in this alone. And so when I see a divorce coach, when I see a therapist there that's available, it's a wonderful resource. I encourage them right away. Call somebody, not your girlfriend, not your cousin, but call someone who's professional who could help you get through this process.
Yes, I agree with you, Attorney Lester. You're spot on. And, you know, a lot of times people think they can't afford it because, you know, each of us has a very unique perspective. And you really do need a team when you're thinking about divorce. This is not something that we're taught about a lot of times. And so this webinar is wonderful because a lot of people just do think that this is something they can go alone. But the thing about a divorce coach is we will help you get more organized so that you become a better client when you're working with your attorney, so that you know, because the attorney-client relationship is an attorney-client relationship. And so the attorney has certain responsibilities, but so do you as the individual. And a lot of times, one of the don'ts, which I would probably address later, is people seem to put a lot of responsibility on the attorney and think the attorney can solve everything, make all the answers. But at the end of the day, whose divorce is this? This is your divorce. This is about you and what's in your best interest. And who knows that better than you? So you definitely don't want to rely on an attorney or even me for that matter to make your decisions. I can help you make the decisions. And something I like to tell my clients is I'm more than happy to walk the path with you, but I cannot walk the path for you. That is something that you have to do. And I'll be here with you. And talking to women, the same thing, talking to their girlfriends, talking to their beauticians, talking to their glam team. You know, everybody's got an opinion, but, you know, nobody knows that situation better than you. Some of these individuals, as sweet as they are, bless their heart, because I'm from the South, so bless their heart. They're not going to give you the best advice, and there will come a point when some of them will disappear altogether. So if you're counting on that support to be long term, you know, because they will get tired, because people are human, they get tired of listening to the story. And one other place that I may be a little bit different than the rest of my colleagues on this platform, as a divorce coach. When I say divorce process, I am able to work with you if you're thinking, you know, if you're on the fence. So if you're thinking about, hey, do I really want to get divorced, or do I want to stay married? I can coach you from that area. I can coach you when you're in the process of going through it and you've got all this paperwork coming at you. And I can also coach you if you have already divorced and you find yourself kind of struggling. What do I do now? What do I do next? You know, and so Janelle, I'm sure, does a lot of work in that area. But Attorney Lester, maybe not so much, and rightfully so, you know, and after the, you know, so I think that's another big difference between the work that I do and the, you know, the work that the attorney does, and how we can complement one another.
Casey Ann, you want to jump in here? I see you unmuting.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. So finance is usually one of the biggest aspects of what causes a divorce, right? We're coming from different perspectives, typically on money and the way we view money and the way we're either taught or not taught about money. So I'd say right up front, even before you get married, and I know sometimes it's already late because you're late stage thinking of a divorce, how can you make finance a non-issue? When you talk about it, I help clients figure out like the different perspectives. Men and women typically think differently about finances, and especially depending on what we were taught or not taught. So having those conversations up front, being honest and transparent, which is not exactly easy to do, but being completely transparent with your spouse, like it's almost getting naked in a different way when you start talking about the things that are important, right? And finance is one big aspect of it, but also having open communication in other areas of your lives as well. So I help clients just look at their finances, and understanding where each of you are coming from so that you can hear each other, not just the words that are spoken, but the things that are said that are not necessarily said out loud.
When you say look at your finances, can you be more specific about that? What are we looking for? What are we looking at?
Sure. So I guess it also depends on the phase of where you are in your marriage, right? So if you're still married, like look at the ways that you're spending, look at the ways that you're saving. Is one person you only live once person, or the other person is like, oh my gosh, like I need to save every single penny for tomorrow because I've got a plan for the future. So if you have two different people who are spending two different ways in a marriage, it's going to cause conflict. And neither, unless you start talking about it and being cognizant of what you're talking about, neither of the other party is going to be able to understand the other person's perspective. This is where you need to hire a financial advisor because they'll be able to look at things from a more objective perspective. And if you're getting a divorce, having a certified divorce financial analyst on your team, because Attorney Lester, I'm sure you're wonderful at helping the divorce process, but not necessarily looking at the finances from a perspective of, coming from, okay, if I have personal assets or I have retirement assets, those two assets, while they're money, are going to be taxed very, very differently. So if one party does not know that or understand that, and your attorney or the person that you're working with doesn't understand that, you could be left holding the tax bag. So if you each get $100,000, the person who has $100,000 of personal assets got $100,000. If the person who got $100,000 of retirement assets probably ended up with $65,000 after it's all said and done. So right off the bat, you realize that equitable, sounding like $100,000 each, was not an equitable settlement. So having somebody on your team can guide you with that.
It sounds to me like, and then we'll go to you, Carlene, because we haven't allowed you to say a thing. But Casey, it sounds to me like, and I could be wrong, but before you want to go, maybe the divorce coach, before you may want to go to the attorney, before you even want to deal with your real estate issues, you might need to know what you have, what you don't have, what you owe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the notes I have is like, don't hide assets, right? You need to be transparent with each other. And especially, typically it's one person who's handling the finances. One person doesn't know about the finances. Both parties need to be on the same page, even if you're not handling it on a day-to-day basis. Have conversations, and I can't stress this enough, have conversations about where you are as a couple. And hire someone. We're not naturally taught about finances, as Jalissa said, right? There are people who have lots of experience looking at finances from a perspective that, like, we don't even know that exists, right? So you think it's too expensive to hire someone, whether it's a coach or an attorney, it's more expensive not to hire the right person.
Carlene, I know you want to jump in here. Please do. And then Dr. Janella, follow up.
Definitely. One of the main things that my background, I worked in the family law courts for approximately 8 years. So I had firsthand knowledge and was able to see a lot of the discourse and everything that transpired during the demise of a marriage. But one of the things when I became a realtor, I knew there was a disconnect between the family law community and real estate. And I found an entity, the Alumni Institute, that specifically identified the disconnect, because when parties are going through a divorce, it's not just when it's time to sell the home, it's not just, oh, it's time to sell the home. These individuals are dealing with the demise of their lives in some instances. And so a certified divorce real estate expert, this designation was created for a neutral third-party realtor to be able to go in and deal with both sides, not at the same time, not together, as separate parties, empathize with both, but basically bring them together and guide them towards the sale of the home. The main thing that tends to happen, one of the main things in a divorce, is finances, whether discussed or not. And one of the most valuable assets is the marital home in a lot of instances. And it's sometimes the last thing that's addressed, and the parties will be divorced, and then the home is to be sold. Well, the market analysis that may have been presented with regard to the value of that property during that divorce, by the time that divorce is finalized, that value may have depleted or it may have increased. Another thing is there are a lot of people that if they're not on board with including the children, if they're not on board with the divorce, the home is a sticking point. As long as we've got this home, there's the possibility for the kids, there's the possibility that they may get back together. Our family may stay together because we're still in the house and this is where we are. And so having a certified divorce real estate expert, first and foremost, do a market analysis, a true market analysis, and pull, because what I do from the beginning, I do background on the property, because sometimes that property, one of the parties that's supposed to be making the mortgage payment has not been making the mortgage payment. And so the home is going into foreclosure, is at that point. And so one of the things that I see a lot within the Black community with regard to this is they'll throw their hands up and say, well, let it go into foreclosure, or he can get the house, she can get the house. This is an asset, one way or the other. This is an asset. You need to, it's something that you may be able to, even if you decide to save the home, it's something that can be left for your children or the proceeds, but make an informed decision regarding the property during the proceedings. Don't wait until the end to go ahead and at the end, okay, this person is awarded the home. And then there are some other things with that, where after the marriage, someone is awarded the home and the deed is transferred to their name. But guess what? The mortgage is in the other person's name. So you're not truly divorced. You're still connected. You still, if anything transpires with regard to that property. So there's a lot of information. Once again, it goes back to resources. There are a lot of resources out there. We tend to not ask questions. That's one of the things that I've come, is that we don't ask questions, or we just, it's okay, it's going to happen, let it happen. We need to be more proactive. It's our life. It's your life. ask questions, do research, reach out. But one of the things is a certified divorce real estate expert is uniquely trained to handle divorce cases. They are versed, they've been to the family law court to understand some of the things you're going through. That's the difference between a divorce real estate expert and a regular real estate professional.
Dr. Janella.
I think, yeah, absolutely, because everything both women said is absolutely on point. And unfortunately, what happens when they're in my office is that fear around finances, that desire to hold on to the house or anger about the house, it drives the more division in the process. And again, it's fear and doubt and pain. And with that, that impacts their willingness and ability to focus on the parenting plan and the custody issues. And what makes it even more complicated is that in the state of California, is that child support and the amount of money you get after the separation for your children plays a role in terms of custody. How much time each parent has impacts the amount of money of child support. So you have these fear around money, fear around the house, where they're going to live. In California, real estate, it's either, it's up or it's way down. So there's no way to escape the impact of the house market if you have a house in common. And then that plays into fears of people being able to do it on their own. And then the kids, where are the kids going to live? Oftentimes they want the kids to have the same lifestyle, no impact on the kids. That's sometimes not possible. And so all this, it's really interlocked. You can't separate it out. And having a team, and people mention teams, with each person focusing on one aspect, and it's their expertise, is the ideal, honestly. Because as a child custody evaluator, parenting coach and parenting coordinator, or mediator, I'm not allowed to discuss finances or make recommendations on child support. I have no financial background. And even if I did, that's not my scope of practice. So even though the parenting plan I help parents develop will impact child support and their financial standing, I can't consider that by law, and it's not appropriate for me, but it has a huge impact, and they need to know that.
Casey?
Absolutely. And the real estate, Carlene, you said the real estate is one of the last things that's looked at, but it's super, super important because sometimes we want the home, right? And we think we have to have the home, but can you afford the upkeep of the home, right? So now you want to hold on to the home, but you can't necessarily afford it. So you have to think from a realistic perspective as well. And especially to Dr. Janella's point just now is depending on where you are located, finances will look very differently and equitable settlement will look very differently, right? So you also want to make sure you're talking to someone who understands the area that you're in. Laws are different across the states. Different decisions will be different depending on where in the state you are. So it's especially important. And by the way, like as a financial professional, and I keep hearing the word where people are shameful about their finances, it does not have to be this way. Find a professional that you connect with and will not talk down to you, but will be able to explain to you the situation that you're in and how to help you to move forward. If you find somebody, if you're interviewing with them, don't take the first person if you're not comfortable with them. You're the person who's paying, right? Make sure that you are in alignment with the professional that you're hiring. The interview is going both ways, right? The professional will see, do I want to work with this person? You have the right and the privilege to determine who you want to work with. And if that person does not align with what you believe and how you want to do it, whatever else, find someone who does.
We're going to go to Jaleesa, and then we're going to hear what Stephen White has to say.
This is so exciting. I'm like chomping at the bit because there were several things that were mentioned, and this is really where helping a divorce coach, having a divorce coach, comes into play with as it relates to working with the other professionals. You know, one of the first things that I will do is work with my clients to have them gather their documents that they need. You know, let's look at that pay stub. Let's look at where's the will. Where's the where are your insurance policies? Where are the deeds? You know, we're gonna meet together and help you get all of that documentation, you know, gathered in one spot and get organized around it. May not understand all of it, but we will at least have, you know, I will at least provide you with a checklist so you'll know what to get and to start looking at. I am also able to provide my clients with a list of interview questions, because you're absolutely right. When you're reaching out to connect with your financial experts and your attorneys, or you want to be able to ask them questions, it is a two-way process, and you want to make sure that you are aligning with someone whose values are complementary or align with yours. So we're able to I provide my clients with a list of questions, you know, that they can use to interview their attorneys and their financial experts, so that they will know, you know, what perspective those individuals share, and if that's somebody that they would be interested in working with. And the comment about real estate, you know, I can't remember who said it, but you know, somebody said, make sure you deal with your emotional stuff before you start getting into the divorce. And a lot of times there is so much emotion tied to holding on to that house. It can be shame. It can be, you know, what do you call it? Memories, you know, nostalgia. It can be, but what about the kids? I don't want to, you know, this is where they grew up. It can be a lot of things, you know, causing you to hold on to that house. And so helping clients to really get in touch with their emotions, you know, and understanding what's so important to you about this house and why is this important, and maybe thinking of ways to reframe some of their thinking. So we do a lot of helping clients. I do a lot of helping my clients think about their thinking and why they feel that way. And also helping them think about, okay, this decision looks good today. Let's think about this 5 years from now. Is this still going to seem like, you know, what do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? And how do you see this house or this particular behavior? You know, what would you like to look back on when you look back on this experience? So absolutely. This is so good. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
So I said we would go to Stephen because he's not here and he needs to be heard. But before we do that, Attorney Lester, why don't you jump in? Dr. Janella, you jump in, and then we got to go to Stephen because I know he has something to say.
Well, I often remind clients at the beginning that divorce is like financial suicide. In most African-American families, we're struggling to get by with two incomes. Now you're going to have to survive on one. And it's devastating. And I tell people all the time, you have to count the cost. Yeah, you might be angry with him because he had an affair. You might be angry with him because he's not the best husband, doesn't pick up behind himself. But you know, at the end of the day, when we file these papers, this is how it's going to roll out. That house is likely going to have to be sold. And I also want to give you an example. The perspective of a child versus that of a parent. I had one kid that basically decided, well, we don't need this house. We're not going to be here anymore. We're not going to be a family anymore. So he decided to strike some matches and burn it down. And so in many ways, the impact of this house or this family, you have to basically look at it. You know, are we talking about a bricks and mortar, or we're talking about life for our child and how our children perceive certain things? And sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, what are we fighting about? Because at the end of the day, you know, divorce for me, as I tell my clients, you get a fork, she gets a spoon. Okay. At the end of the day, the judge is going to divide property as equitably and as fairly as the court will allow. But don't get hung up on bricks and mortar. May have a lot of memory, there may be a lot of sentimental value there, but at the end of the day, it's about your children, It's about them emerging healthy and whole, because what we find is that children who don't resolve some of this family conflict carry that into their relationships as adults, and their marriages fail because they didn't see a good model of a strong marriage or a good marriage, or maybe you stayed too long in that relationship. Maybe you should have gotten out of that relationship years ago, and that child saw a lot of abuse and saw things that he or she should not have been witness to. And so now it impacts them later on in their lives. So I think that, while I understand that the real estate piece is a that's the most, in the Black community, that's the most important asset that we have. And we see families all the time, they work so hard to pay these mortgage payments and make it work so that their children can have a nice livelihood. And to lose that, or the possibility of losing that, is very significant in their lives. And it creates this inner conflict sometimes that we see. And I have to talk to them and say, you know what? Okay, you can take some of the proceeds from the sale and rebuild, try and do something different, but don't let this house be the hindrance from you moving forward in your life in the future.
Dr. Janella, you want to jump in?
I wanted to add is that, and I've talked about this ideal relationship, and in my experience, the house is a physical manifestation of that ideal relationship, even to an extent, a childhood dream. And whether it's a $5 million mansion or a 2-bedroom condo, that house represents what people, men and women, have been wanting and wishing for. And it's an accomplishment. And then you add to that this idea that having to sell it or let it go, not only is it devastating emotionally because you're having to let go of that ideal that you were wanting, you have to explain it to family, and that connects back to shame. So the house and that real estate piece and the finances and the fear and doubt, it's all intertwined. And I think helping parents separate from that ideal manifestation of the house and what it really is in reality, and helping them move forward is one of the steps that has to occur. Because I've worked with families who are divorced. Divorce is final or almost final. Papers, they have parenting plans, and they are literally still in the house. And it is a toxic and hurtful and painful environment, not only for them, but for their children. So letting go of that has to be part of the process if it's financially necessary.
All right, let's hear what Stephen White has to say. Plays video. Stephen, tell us, why is valuating a business in the dissolution of a marriage so important?
It's important for a number of different reasons. And I find that the challenge is that oftentimes the spouse doesn't really understand. They may be involved with the business. They may deal with some of the clients. They may even work in the business, but they don't understand exactly how that business operates and where that revenue is actually coming from. So in most cases, people just assume this is what they think the value of this business is. And if we get, if we're separated, we get a divorce, I know how much business this company makes, so I should determine what my alimony or child custody should be. That's not always the case. Because of those common fraud areas that I mentioned before, someone could actually even say that we're bankrupt after they file their taxes and say, you know what, we haven't made a penny over the last 5 years. But in the meantime, you have a vacation home, you have a second home, you paid for college tuition. Where did all this money come from? It's just a way that they've actually been filing their reports. It's a way that they have recorded different expenses. And at the end of the day, it comes up as saying that they have a net income of negative. The valuation part of it comes in to really normalize all that information and to make the proper adjustments to really come up with a true, accurate determination of value. That's the reason why it's so important in everyday life, but even more important if you're going through a divorce, whether or not it's your business or it's on the other side of the equation.
Carlene, there's a lot of talk about the marital asset of the house. I mean, everybody is jumping in on this topic because it's so valuable and so important. What do you have to say about this?
Well, that's the interesting thing, is that it is one of the key pieces in divorces, but like I said, it's usually the last piece that's addressed. And one of the things that parties need to be aware of is one of the conflicts that arises a lot in the divorce is how they're going to pay for certain things. If the parties do a financial analysis as to where they are and where they're going to be, their future income, and it's determined during that proceeding, during the divorce proceeding, it's determined that neither one would be able to maintain that home. That home can be put on the market, sold, and those funds put into a trust where it's disbursed during this divorce proceeding, which would reduce a lot of the conflict with regard to, well, I can't pay for this, or I can't pay for this, etc. Those funds would already be in that space, in that trust, for the court to decide how to disperse it. But some people hold on to it because they're under the misconception in some instances that, because there have been instances where a lender has done an analysis for one party to say, oh, you can keep the house, you can afford to continue to make the payment, but the money they used to make this determination was their previous income. They don't take into consideration what the future income is going to be, because in some instances it's a two-party two income. And so when it goes to one income, how much is if there's going to be spousal maintenance or child support, how much is that going to be? All of those things need to be brought into play, and a true analysis, honest analysis be made with regard to that property. Additionally, in that house, there are people fighting, and one party is saying, well, I want to stay in the house because this is where the kids live. The kids have grown up here. And those kids internalize that. They're fighting because of me. They're fighting over the house because of me, because you've brought the kids, because most of the time when these conflicts are occurring, you're not paying attention to where the kids are. And they're listening and they're thinking, okay, my parents are fighting over the house because of me. And so there are a lot of considerations with regard to the property, but the divorce real estate experts are, once again, we're uniquely trained with regard to all these aspects, all these facets in a divorce, so that we can be neutral first and foremost. Don't have your friend sell your house during a marriage, because that puts your friend in an awkward position. They're going to have to take sides one way or the other. You may think they won't, but they will. It puts them in an awkward position. You need someone that's neutral and that understands what you're going through.
I want to make sure we leave time for questions from our guests who are in the room. But before, and we're going to do that next, but before we do that, let's hear one more time from Stephen White about his perspective in the Black family. The Black family, business, and divorce.
Thinking. I'm sorry.
Are not supposed to think.
Yeah, I know. The Black family and the business is a growing area that needs to be educated on how they can continue to grow their families, understanding generational wealth transfer. And that all starts off with knowing where you currently are today. And that is through getting a valuation done, having a consultation meeting at least, of understanding your overall business. That is an area that we lack so much. And I think that has a big factor on our family or our communities, because of the mere fact that we don't focus on creating wealth. We focus on just running the overall business until it goes down instead of creating wealth, something that generational transfer over to the next generation and continuing that overall process.
Evaluator is more important than.
Evaluator is more important than your attorney, your CPA, your forensic person, because at the end of the day, the attorney, your forensic, your CPA can't tell them what that privately held business is really worth and how that will affect you not only today, but also in the future.
All right, there we go. So we're getting some questions in from our guests, and I'm going to encourage the guests to type in your question. I'll see it show up, and then I'll ask it. So the first question on the docket is, what jurisdiction is Carlene Johnson in? Okay.
Carlene Johnson is in the greater Houston area. However, there are, as of last week, 75 certified divorce real estate experts in the country. And we are uniquely trained. And so if you visit the alumniinstitute.com, it has a summary and it shows every certified divorce real estate expert in the country. And so you can identify wherever you are in the country, whether or not there is one in your area.
Thank you. So while we wait for our guests to ask any other questions, I want to know, I see that Jaleesa, you're looking to say something, so go for it.
No, during the course of these listening to everyone, I noticed the word house a lot. And, one of the things I try to help my clients think about is house versus home, because I think words matter. And I think, the divorce process represents a beautiful, there's so many ways that you can use this process to set healthy examples for our children and anyone else who may be watching this play out. But I think one of them is in terms of this idea of what the home is. The home is literally, a lot of times when you peel it all back, it's more about the people, and the experience that you have with one another and the love that you share for one another. And so home, a lot of times, is really in the heart, and so that means you can go any place, and as long as you're together, at the end of the day, a lot of times that you may find that that's enough. So that was it's a beautiful opportunity to show that, and sometimes you do have to take a step back or do something differently in order to move forward. So even though it may look like your world is falling apart because you have to move out of this particular house, I firmly believe that God does not close one door without opening another one. I never believe our best days are behind us. And so that's not something I outright tell my clients, but I do try to, help work with them in ways that help them reframe how they're thinking about things and say, is there a way that we can look at this a little bit differently? Because who knows what's on the other side of this? My guess is it's probably going to be something even magical. And if you've demonstrated that you can do this one time, then you have the capability to do it again, at least do that again, probably something even bigger. But that's kind of the way I think about it. And I try to help my clients think about it.
We have some questions coming in, so let me get to them. There are two so far. We talk a lot about the house. What if you rent? Advice on managing kids' emotions. I'm going to let anyone jump in on that one.
I think when you're talking about there's two things, the renting and then managing kids' emotions. So I'm going to take the managing kids' emotions around the move. One of the things that is important for children is to know that they will have access to both parents, regardless where each parent lives. And if you are renting and you're separating into different rentals, it's ideal for both parties to move to a location that's close to the school, within driving distance of the school, and reasonably close to one another. I'm not saying rent in the same apartment complex or rent houses next door to each other. But if you can both wake up in the morning during your parenting time, get your kids dressed, ready for school with a reasonable commute to school, and have that consistency and have the distance between the homes be reasonable so that timeshare, commuting is not a huge factor in the timeshare. That's the ideal. And that helps keep the kids more settled. It gives them the understanding that they will have both parents and there will be some structure and normalcy as the process moves on. But if one parent's moving to the other side of town or a neighboring city, that brings into question all kinds of complications around the parenting plan, timeshare, and transportation of the children in between for the exchanges.
There's a second follow-up question to that, but did anyone else want to say something quickly about that question that just came in? Okay, so the second question is, how can you protect your assets when you're the primary breadwinner and the spouse will not be able to afford to live on their own?
Well, I could take that one. Historically, whether or not we want to accept it or not, African American women often make more money than their spouses. They're often better educated than their spouses, which creates some conflict. And, oftentimes I see when a judge orders maintenance or spousal support from a man to a woman, that's okay. But if the judge orders spousal support from her to him, that's a different story. What kind of brother would take money from a sister, right? Or, what kind of man are you? But what we're seeing are these trends that lead to conflict because oftentimes when that African-American woman has to write a check for $3,000 a month to support him, because now that she's an MD and she married somebody that was maybe just didn't have a professional degree, because we see this in many instances, which often leads to conflict. In certain instances, a Black man getting out of prison can find love more than a Black woman finishing her PhD. I mean, there are 2 or 3 sisters that are ready to take him in and embrace him. And she's done everything right to find companionship. She's, gone to school, she's graduated, she's done all these things. There's a male shortage. There's a good Black male shortage. And sometimes, you guys are very, very, I like the way you approach divorce, because, what I see is like, oh, it's a war going on. And we don't get to the house issue because we're doing all these other crazy things because he's now found somebody half his age. And so she's pissed about that. And it's on at this point. And so you have to draw this line in the sand. And so I think that when you have these spousal issues that are financial, and you see money coming out of her pocket going into his pocket, and now he's got a little young thing on his arm, she doesn't take that she's angry. She's mad about that. And so, I want to deal with the issue of child support because Black men often shirk their responsibilities in terms of supporting their kids. They'd rather move in with somebody else and support their kids than to support the kids that you've given, fatherhood to. And so this is a big issue when, she can't get that support check on time. He's late again. He's got another excuse. He moves jobs. He changes addresses. Nobody can find him. He's working for cash instead of, as a W-2 worker. These are all kinds of issues that create conflict, anger, and bitterness, and they drive the temperature up in divorce cases. That's what I see.
We have some more questions coming in. The question is it better to sell your home before or after divorce for tax implications?
with regard to the sale of the home, first and foremost, you have to determine I'm not a tax expert. And so your financial picture is what your first priority should be, whether or not the home should be sold during the divorce or after the divorce, is because you don't want to wait to sell the home after the divorce. And by that time it's in foreclosure. So you have to see where the home is, whether or not either one of you is able to maintain the payments on that. And then with regard to that, your tax advisor, you would need to reach out to a tax advisor because, your income, et cetera, plays a part with regard to the true answer to that question.
Yeah, Casey, jump in too.
Some of
the next question.
Whether it's also marital asset, right? So you might have owned the home prior to getting married. That's important to look at as well. So it's not always so cut and dry as to sell before, during, or after. There are lots of other nuances that impact that. And one of the things that I should say is if you can, keep your premarital assets in one bucket. And when you get married, if you decide to join your assets together, create accounts that can show that these are now marital assets. From a perspective of looking at, and just kind of going back to the other questions, how can I protect my assets? Were those assets earned during in the duration of the marriage, right? As opposed to were there assets before, and depending on how long you've been married and where you live, jurisdiction, there's so many nuances, and that's why it's important to have a professional who has an expertise in the thing that you're asking. Because I think, as you've discovered, listening to each of us, whether it's taking care of your children or coaching or an attorney or real estate, we all have a part to play. And that's why the team approach is best. Even though it might seem expensive on the upfront, it will save you a whole lot of money and grief on the back end.
Yeah, nice. Another question here. I've conducted over 350 divorce and family mediations for separating, divorcing, and never married clients. However, I find that the overwhelming majority of Black couples are in the never married category, i.e., Black couples that are divorcing do not go to family mediation. If this has been your experience, why do you believe this is?
That is interesting. And I've like this individual, I've done hundreds of mediations in several counties in Northern California, in the Bay Area, and the vast majority of them are not African American. And the ones that I've seen that are the vast majority of African American clients I've worked with for mediation have been court referred, or when I'm officially tied to a court and not privately. And one gentleman, this is a few years ago, kind of summarized his view of this for me. And I think it may be true for many African-American males and specifically. And he said, "Doctor, I don't have nothing to do with the court. I don't go to court. I don't file court. I don't want to see the court. I don't want my name in court. All these filings, and the reason I'm sitting in your office is because she filed. And she continues to file. And he was mandated to see me, mandated for mediation. But there seems to be, and for good reason, a deterrent for some African-American males to have anything to do with the court, let alone mediation. So that's, I would say that there's a deterrent for them to be involved in the legal process of family court.
Okay, so Carlene, we're going to go to you, and then I have a question for the panel after Carlene, you say what you got to say.
One of the things that I've seen quite often with the African American community, just overall, is going to someone in order for you to tell them what's going on and for them to give you feedback is kind of taboo. It's not something that most African Americans feel that they need to do, or they feel that these people aren't going to tell me or can't tell me what to do one way or the other because they don't understand my situation. And I think that goes back to the piece of there are a lot of resources out there that we don't use. And so mediation is a huge resource that can be so beneficial, that will address things that you didn't even think of in order to smooth the process. But it's a case of there are misconceptions in the minds of African Americans, I feel, with regard to mediation, and just the feeling that, well, they can't tell me anything. There's nothing that they can tell me.
My question to the panel, and I'm sure it's a question in the minds of those of our guests, is, okay, all right, everybody stop. So if I'm just thinking about divorce, which one of y'all should I call first? If I'm already in the thick of divorce, which one of y'all should I go to next? And if I'm already out of divorce, but I'm recovering, who am I talking to? So let's do that as quickly as we can, because we're going to wrap up and let our guests go about their day. Okay, contemplating, I'm already in it, I'm recovering. Who do I talk to?
I know I can, as a divorce coach, I can help in all three areas. Because a lot of this really is about the emotions behind wherever you are and how you're feeling. So if you're in a state of contemplation, I have exercises and techniques to help you figure out, is this something that you want to, do you want to stay married, or do you really want to go? And we can get into what's causing how are you thinking one way or the other? If you're in the process, a lot of times people get overwhelmed. There's a lot of paperwork involved in divorce. You can just look at the other experts that are on the panel who you will need, and each of them has a different set of requirements, expectations for what that partnership looks like. And so, and they really are more dealing from a left brain perspective in a lot of ways, because they're dealing at the facts, the black and white, what the law says. And so you need a divorce coach who can help you deal with some of those emotions, and also help you get organized around so that you can show up as a better client for them with the right questions and the right expectations. And then if you're trying to recover from divorce and just having trouble moving on, I can most certainly help you do that as well.
I was going to add to that. One of the guides I give people is what concern or question wakes you up in the middle of the night? Are you worried about the house? Is it a legal question? Is it finances in general? Is it worried about the kids? Get information from an expert in that area, because that information is going to help you eventually sleep better at night. Because you're going to need all of us at one point. It's likely, but you want information so that you can rest. So go with the questions you need answered.
Okay, Casey.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Dr. Janella. It's the thing that's pressing you the most that you should try to address first, right? So if it's finances, it's seeking someone who can help you to look at where your finances are or whatever else. If it's, all right, you want to be done, right? And it might be an attorney, and your attorney will help to guide the process and who you need to speak with. But what I can say is that seek out professional guidance, and it's not taboo. There's no shame in asking for help. None of us are taught the things that we have learned and have 20 or however many years of experience that we have. It's seeking help in the department that you need it, so that you can, and not just for you or your ex-spouse, it's more about the children and making sure that the children at the end of the day are coming out of this as unscathed as they can be.
We have one more question, and it's going to probably need to be a quick yes or no. And then we're going to wrap up with each panelist. Tell us what to do. Give us your do and don't statements. The question on the board is, do any of you all practice domestic collaborative law?
I am trained in collaborative law. However, it is not taken off very much in the African American community. It's a very expensive proposition because even though you're working with, a single maybe coach, financial advisor, all these things, all these elements come into play sometimes, and it can be a more expensive process. And it was never designed to just, not be expensive, but it was designed to take some of the drama and the trauma out of the divorce process. And so, for that reason, I think it's an effective tool, but it can be very expensive. And it hasn't gone over as well in the African American community as it's gone over in other communities.
Well, since you answered that one, Attorney Lester, why don't you take us into what do we do? What do we do? What do we not do? Give us 3 of those.
Remember, never file for a divorce too soon. Never file for a divorce too late. And just remember that you can get through this process with the support, the professional support. If you adhere to that, you'll make it through this, and your family will be better off.
Thank you. Casey.
So do pay attention to your finances before, during, and after your divorce. Do try to be fair and equitable to the other party. Do understand that earnings in a marriage are marital assets. And as best as you can, don't make your divorce acrimonious for the benefit of yourself and those around you. And don't try to hide assets. It doesn't quite work.
Janella.
Do's and don'ts, or just do's for now?
Go for do's and don'ts. Give it all to us.
All right, do. Remember, you are getting a divorce from your spouse. Your child is not divorcing their parent. Do support the relationship between your co-parent and your children. And do recognize your co-parent as an equal parent by respecting their rules for your children in their home. And don't give your child the impression that at a certain age they can choose where they want to live. That's a myth. It's not true. Don't make negative comments about the co-parent in front of the children or other adults in their life, coaches, teachers, the parents of their friends. And don't believe that co-parenting stops when your child turns 18, because it does not.
Jaleesa. Whew. Unmute yourself, Jaleesa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't belittle your soon-to-be ex in front of anyone or try to instigate them. This is a sad reflection on your character and can cause further aggravation. Don't undermine their friendships or try to alienate them from their family. Start focusing on yourself so that you can continue to move on. And don't have physical or emotional contact with your soon-to-be ex, because all it does is confuse you, confuse them, confuse the kids. So remember your boundaries. As far as the do's, do spend time working on yourself. Make self-care a premium. Do think about your children. Think about how you're showing up in front of your children and what kind of example that you want to set for them. And do communicate with your soon-to-be ex only when it's necessary. Keep healthy boundaries when you're talking to your soon-to-be ex.
Carlene.
It's reiterating do be very mindful of your words with regard to your other spouse and in front of your children. Do realize that this is not going to go on forever. This is a change that you have to go through, but it's not going to continue forever. Don't tear up the house in a fit of rage. Don't, or because it's awarded to the other party. Don't have your friend, I'm reiterating this, have your friend be the real estate professional that you choose to sell your house. And don't be afraid to reach out for information, for assistance, for guidance.
Thank you. Don't mute yourself yet, Carlene, because now I'm going to ask each of you if you could just share one, just one, we all only have time for one, resource or giveaway or tidbit for the listeners, for our guests. One offer, Green.
If you're interested in receiving the 5 questions that you should ask your real estate professional when you're going through a divorce, feel free to reach out to me. You can, do I give my email or is it just going to be provided at the end?
Yeah, I'll get that to you.
Okay.
Elisa, your one offering, giveaway.
Sorry. Yes, if you're interested in, if divorce is imminent and you need to know, you want to know what you need to do, please reach out to me and I can get you started on some of the things you need to do if divorce is imminent.
Dr. Janella?
I have developed a co-parenting course. It's called Introspective Comprehensive Co-Parenting. It's a virtual 8-week course that gives you 12 hours of co-parenting education. You can see more at iccparenting.com. And as a giveaway, I can offer you a 30-minute consultation on a parenting plan. You can reach me through Pamela.
All right, then. Casey?
If you want to talk more about your finances and to understand where you currently stand, I'm happy to have a 30-minute consultation on just talking finances. I think a topic that we don't talk about enough.
And Attorney Lester.
You can always pick up a copy of my book, The African American Guide to Divorce, which outlines everything from how to select a lawyer, how to deal with finances, how to deal with family issues. It just outlines every aspect of Black life.
Yes, and that book is Divorce and Drama, The African American Guide to Divorce and Drama, Breaking Up Without Breaking Down, for Lester's title of his book. And Casey has a book too. So there's a lot of resources here for all of our guests. Guests, I want you to know.
I also have 30-minute, I forgot to mention that I offer 30-minute complimentary consultations too. So sorry about that.
Another complimentary consultation. So this is great. They're great resources. So for the guests, I want you to know that there's going to be a post-webinar survey. I really encourage you to complete it because when you do, I can then forward your information to our guides today so that you can get directly in touch with them and get your needs met. I also want to say that I am putting together another webinar called Divorce and Drama, Men Hurt Too, the African American Guide to Healing the Strong. I want to say happy Mother's Day to all of my panelists, all of my guides. Happy Mother's Day to all of the guests who attended today. And with that, I am going to thank everyone for showing up today and giving your best to our guests and the guests for showing up to get the best. Again, we have problems that we don't want, and we have solutions we want that we don't have. And today, I hope that you got solutions that you want. So for now, see y'all again, hopefully soon. And thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Divorce and Drama, the African American Guide to Breakups and Breakthroughs.